Okay, good evening, everybody. Tonight is the last class, by the way, until after Pesach. The next class of Monday and Wednesday is going to be 3 weeks from tonight in Mitzvah Shem, Wednesday night. The Monday night after Pesach won't be a class either. Okay, so tonight we're going to discuss the uniqueness of this year. The first 2 weeks ago, we discussed getting the house ready for Pesach. Last week, we discussed products. This week, we're going to discuss the uniqueness of this week's order because Erev Pesach falls out on Shabbos. So therefore, we're going to discuss that and get into some of the laws of the Seder. Okay, so number one, this year, Erev Pesach really is Shabbos. But because Shabbos, we're restricted in a lot of things. So in certain things, we do things a day earlier. So for instance, normally searching for the Chabad should have been Friday night, but we can't do it Friday night. So we're going to go in the order of the day, starting from Thursday, Friday, Shabbos, and then get into the Seder. So the fast of the firstborn, which is normally done Erev Pesach, we don't even push it up to Friday. We push it up 2 days earlier. So this year, the fast of the firstborn is going to be on Thursday. Thursday, the 10th of April, which is the 12th of Nisan. Okay, so it's the fast of the firstborn. The firstborn have to go to shul, listen to an ending of a tractate, or if there's a bris milah or a pinyan aben, a suda of a mitzvah, so then they don't have to fast. Thursday, the firstborn have to hear a siyum. They have to participate in the meal, in the eating of the food of the siyum. Thursday night, we do B'dikas Chametz. Okay? Now, B'dikas Chametz, you basically put out the 10 pieces of bread like you would in a normal time. We search the whole house. As I mentioned the other day, and it's very important to keep this in mind, you're allowed to do B'dikas Chametz a few nights earlier, as long as you leave over one room to be able to make a bracha on Thursday night. The only time you can make a bracha on B'dikas Chametz this year would be Thursday night. So if somebody is leaving town, let's say Wednesday, they have to do B'dikas Chametz Tuesday night without a bracha. But let's say you want to do B'dikas Chametz Sunday, Monday night, or Tuesday, whatever. You're allowed to, providing you leave over one room, that you should be able to make a bracha, on Thursday night. If people want to make the kitchen Pesach, that we mentioned this last time, I'm going to mention again, but it's very important. If you want to make your kitchen Pesach, like let's say Monday, then Sunday night you have to do B'dikas Chametz in the kitchen. No bracha, no pieces of bread. Just take a flashlight and check and make sure that there's no Chametz. Okay, so Thursday pushed up is the fast of the firstborn. It's also the night of B'dikas Chametz. When we finish B'dikas Chametz, we put out 10 pieces. When we do B'dikas Chametz, we put out 10 pieces of bread. Each piece should be smaller than a kazayah, smaller than an ounce. But altogether, it's preferable that there should be an ounce, that you're burning a substantial amount of bread, of chametz. We put out the bread not because you have to, it's a custom. Dr. Rebbe says, Minig Yisrael Torah, it's a big Kabbalistic aspect of the 10 pieces of bread. Now, when you start doing B'dikas Chametz, you gather the family together. Okay, you gather the family together, you make a bracha. The kids are older than bar mitzvah. The custom is the boys do B'dikas Chametz, not the girls, and not the women, unless if a woman lives alone, then she has to do B'dikas Chametz. But B'dikas Chametz, you put out the 10 pieces of bread, you make sure you know where they are, you wrap them in a napkin that you can burn eventually, and you make sure that they don't crumb, and you make sure you know exactly where they are. You put out the 10 pieces of bread. B'dikas Chametz has to be done any place that you go into during Pesach, which means your car, you have to do B'dikas Chametz. If you're going into your businesses, you have to do B'dikas Chametz. You need to check anywhere that you're going to be going into during Pesach, you need to do B'dikas Chametz. Thursday night, after you finish, you make a bracha, I'll be in Chametz. You search the whole house. After you finish searching the whole house for chametz, you put the 10 pieces of bread into a bag, you tie it up. Our custom is that this wooden spoon is protruding from the bag. So you put the feather, the candle, the 10 pieces of bread, or any other chametz that you find, you put it into a bag, and then you put it away the bag to be able to burn Friday morning. After you do bedikas chametz Thursday night, you have to nullify the chametz. You have to do bittul chametz. Okay, so you do bittul chametz, as it says in the Haggadah and the Seder. You have to know what you're saying. I know it's written in Aramaic because that's the language everybody knew. But if somebody doesn't know Aramaic and they're going to say it in Aramaic and they don't know what they're talking about, they did not fulfill that aspect of nullifying the chametz. You're basically saying any chametz they know about, they don't know about, should be free for all and should be like dust to the ground. That means we're totally removing our ownership from that level of chametz. Friday morning, okay, so there's no first sima, there's no firstborn siyam because that was done Thursday. Now, technically, you're allowed to burn chametz a whole day or sell chametz a whole day. Nevertheless, it says in halacha that you're supposed to do it the same time you do every year, or the Alter Rebbe writes at least before midday. So in other words, the rabbis will sell chametz this year Friday morning. They will burn the chametz Friday morning. Okay, but when you burn the chametz this year Friday morning, because it's not Erev Pesach, and you're still going to be using chametz, so you don't nullify the chametz at the time you burn the chametz. You burn the chametz, you say the Yiratzin, that about burning the 10 pieces of bread, we should get rid of the chametz within us, but you do not nullify the chametz because you're still going to be using the chametz later on that day, night, next Shabbos morning. So the nullification of chametz, and this people have to make a note to remember, is done Shabbos Shabbos morning, after you finish eating, in LA time before 11:51 a.m. That's LA time. You have to nullify the chametz. You have to say the kol chamir in any language you understand. So we don't know. We sell the chametz, we burn the chametz, but we don't nullify the chametz because we're still using it. So you nullify the chametz Shabbos morning, anytime Shabbos morning after you finish eating, and you put all the crumbs, as we'll discuss, you flush it down the toilet, then you nullify the chametz before 11:51. And that's a very, very important thing to remember. People should somehow make a note that they shouldn't forget to do it. Okay. Some people, normally the Rebbe writes in the Haggadah that we don't eat on Erev Pesach any of the ingredients of the maror or the charesis, which means that Erev Pesach on a regular until Kairach at the end of the second Seder, I mean, you could eat it at the meal of the second Seder, but not Erev Pesach, not the first day of Pesach, not at night. So, so Erev Pesach we don't eat anything from the. It's when people say anything from the Seder plate, that's incorrect. We don't eat what our custom is. Anything of the maror, meaning we will not eat lettuce, we will not eat horseradish. We will not eat any ingredients of the charesis, so we wouldn't be eating apples and pears and nuts and Erev Pesach. Now, this year, Friday is not Erev Pesach. Nevertheless, it's brought down in Chabad that some people are machmir that even Friday they won't this year, even though it's not actually Erev Pesach, they will still not eat any of the ingredients of the maror charesis. I'm going to answer all the questions later, and you can put them in, but I'm not answering them until we're done. Okay, that's Friday. Now, Friday, you have to be careful. You shouldn't be eating chametz around the house. You know the ones. Now, what's very important to understand, and it's not so much it's the more the rabbi's problems, and that is we sell chametz Friday morning, as we mentioned, Friday morning. The only issue is, but we're still using chametz. We're using chametz Friday night. We're using chametz Shabbos morning. So how does it work with the selling of the chametz? So the halacha is, and again, there's very complicated halachas with this, but just to mention it very briefly, we sell the chametz Friday morning, but we write that it's not effective until right before Shabbos. And we write a time, even what time Shabbos is in LA time, where we sell the chametz. And by the way, people going out east this year to New York can sell chametz here in LA. Normally they can't, but here, because it's a whole day that you have to be able to sell the chametz. So if you're going to out east, New York, Florida, wherever it is, you can sell chametz in LA also. Or you could sell it there. It really doesn't matter. According to most opinions, you can even sell it if you're going to Israel. You can sell it here also. But some people say you should better sell it in Israel. Okay, so that's so therefore, what we write in the document, when we discuss this with the guy, we're selling all the chametz except what will be eaten Friday night and Shabbos day of chametz. So that we don't sell. So when you finish it, you have to finish it, and we'll discuss now the details in a second. You finish it, you eat it over a napkin, you flush the napkin and the crumbs down the toilet. I would suggest use a tissue rather than a napkin. I don't know if the toilets will flush it properly or not, but you eat it if it very, and we'll discuss in a minute exactly how to go about doing it. What's very important also to know, because Shabbos you're not allowed to do certain things, Yom Tov you're not allowed to do certain things. So halachically, I'm not getting into all the halachic aspects of it, but just a very practical thing. On Friday, you have to make the roast, the shengbon, the zeraya. You have to make the hard-boiled eggs. You have to make the salt water. You should make the chareses. Everything that you need for the Seder should be made on Friday. Because Shabbos, you cannot make it for Saturday night, preparing from Shabbos for the weekday. Plus, there's a lot of things, even if you do it the night of Yom Tov, Saturday night, there's a lot of restrictions of what you're allowed to do or not allowed to do. So just in a very practical way, people must remember that everything you need for the Seder, which entails cooking or roasting or whatever it may be, you must remember to do it all on Friday. The salt water, the zeraya roasting, the zeraya, the egg, the chareses, everything should be made before Shabbos on Friday, because that takes it off a lot of issues. Okay, now let's come to Friday night and Shabbos day. What do you do? The most practical thing to do is to have a Pesach meal. Okay, but there is an inyan of eating chametz and Shabbos. You have to eat challah. You can't eat matzah. Matzah you're not allowed to eat. And chametz you could eat. So you have to be very careful. In other words, practically speaking like this, the whole Friday night meal should be Pesach meal. Shabbos day meal should all be a Pesach meal. You make Kiddush, and here you have different options. You make Kiddush, and in the same room, you wash and have a meitzi, eat a challah. Now you have to make sure that the challah doesn't crumble, and therefore a lot of people are suggesting pita bread doesn't crumble so much, but you have to make sure it's a whole pita bread, not a cut pita bread. You should have a whole, 2 whole pita breads for lechem mishnah. You make kiddush, you eat the pita bread carefully, don't give it to your kids, over a napkin or a tissue, and then when you finish it, you make sure there's no crumbs left on you or nothing. Friday night, then you rinse your mouth, get rid of the chametz on yourself or in your mouth, and then you go sit down and eat the Pesach meal. Now, because Kiddush has to be in the place of the meal, so some people do different things. Let's say you have a backyard. Some people will make Kiddush in the backyard, wash and eat the challah in the backyard, because they don't want chametz in the house. And then they'll dust themselves off, and and then they'll come into the house, and then they'll rinse off their mouth in cold water in the bathroom sink, and then you sit down to your Pesach meal. Or if you want to make kiddush inside and you want to eat the challah outside, now the din is kiddush has to be where the meal is. So if you can see the place, let's say you're making kiddush in a room and you could see the outside, and you want to make kiddush in the house and you could see the outside area, then you can wash and eat the ametzi in the outside area. If you can't see the outside area, then it's not a good kiddush, because kiddush has to be in the place of the meal. The meal has to be either in the same room, I'm talking practical now, either in the same room, or it has to be in a room that you can see from the place of make kiddush. Some people, you don't have to do this. Some people are more meticulous, will make kiddush, eat the challah, save over a little piece of challah for the end of the meal. After they finish eating everything, they'll eat a little piece of challah and then they'll bench. So again, you can make kiddush in the same room. If you have a big room, you can go to, again, a lot depends on the practicality. Do you have little kids? Don't you have little kids? If you have little kids, halachically, you can give them egg matzah, which is not chametz, but you can give them egg matzah. For an adult to make kiddush and egg matzah, you'd have to eat a lot of egg matzah. It's not a very practical thing the way we hold. And it's the best thing is have a little challah you're going to finish. You have to make sure that the challah that you're using, you're going to finish. Because if you have leftover challah, you're going to have to give it to the guy as a present. If you have a guy, if you don't have a guy, you're going to have to crumble it all down the toilet. So you have exactly the amount that you need, that you're going to be eating. You make kiddush, you wash your ametzi, you eat the challah away from the base of the table, you wash your hands, you rinse your mouth, and then you go sit down and have your Friday night Pesach meal, and then you bench when you finish eating. That is as far as Friday night goes. Shabbos morning, again, because you have to finish eating chametz at a certain time. It's in LA again, it's 10:56. Let me just double check. Yeah, 10:46. 10:46, you have to be finished eating in LA time. 10:46, you have to be finished eating. By 11:51, you have to nullify the chametz. Shabbos morning, the shows all daven early, because you can't daven 10 o'clock, because you can only eat chametz until a certain time. You have to eat chametz. So they daven early, like 7:30 or 7 o'clock. Some places daven 6:30, whatever. You daven, and then it's a regular Shabbos davening, a unique haftarah according to Chabad custom. We say this haftarah only when it is Erev Pesach. Shabbos Hagadol is Erev Pesach. So again, you finish davening, you go home, you make kiddush again with the challah, do exactly like you did Friday night. Then you rinse your mouth, make sure there's no crumbs anywhere, everything goes down the toilet, and make sure there's no chametz left. Then you finish eating with your Pesach meal. But again, you have to remember Shabbos day before 11:51 LA time I'm talking about, you have to nullify the chametz. It's a very, very important nullification. That's the main nullifying of the chametz. After eating, okay, same thing, okay. Now, what's very important to know, a few things about Shabbos day. First of all, you are not allowed to do any preparation for Saturday night in a house. You can't set the table. You can't take food out of it. You can't do anything for Shabbat, for Saturday night. If you have a Chabad house, you're having a lot of people over, then it becomes what's called a public place. Then halachically, you can have a guy, and listen carefully what the guy is allowed to do. The guy is allowed to set the table. He can take food out of the refrigerator. He can make a salad, but he cannot do any malacha, meaning he can't cook, he can't heat, he cannot do any. He can set the tables. He can even put the Seder plate on the table because it's only preparation for Shabbos for the weekday, which if there's a lot of people, la halacha, the guy could do it. But most people say that's only when you have a public Seder, not if you have a regular household. So you can't do any preparation whatsoever. Again, a guy, if it's a public Seder, could do it. Now, when you want to take a nap Shabbos afternoon, after all that is done, you have a long time Shabbos afternoon to take a nap. So halachically, you could take a nap. But there's a very important din. It says in Al-Dreb brings on Hilchos Shabbos, you're not allowed to say to somebody, I'm taking a nap in order to be up Saturday night. In other words, halachically, you're not allowed to tell your kids, go to sleep, that you should be able to be up by the Seder. That you're not allowed to say. You can tell them go to sleep, because sleep itself is enjoyment. But you can't say it that it's a preparation. This, by the way, applies to every Shabbos. You can't say to somebody, I have to be up late Saturday night, I'm going to take a nap. You're not allowed to do that. You can sleep, you can take a nap. But you can't say that you're doing it because of Saturday night. That you wouldn't be allowed to do. Okay, that's as far as this uniqueness of this year, as far as the practicality. So again, the fast of the firstborn is Thursday. Thursday night is B'dikas Chametz. Friday morning we burn chametz and sell chametz, but we don't nullify the chametz. Shabbat Friday night, you have the chametz meal, chametz bread, challah, whatever, 2 challahs. You make sure you finish it. Then you rinse your mouth, make sure there's no chametz. Then you go eat your Pesach meal. The same thing Shabbos morning. Now, what happens if Shabbos morning you want to have coffee and cake? Okay, you're still allowed to eat chametz until 10:46 in LA. So what do you do if you want to have coffee and cake Shabbos morning? It'll be Shabbos. So first of all, you can't have a chametz sticker urn, because then what are you going to do with it? So you can have a Pesach sticker urn, you can have a Pesach sticker coffee, or whatever you do on Pesach. If you want to have a piece of chametz sticker cake, again, you have to eat it off by the side. You can eat it outside. Make sure there's no crumbs. Any crumb you have to get rid of. You have to flush it down the toilet. You have to make sure that the cake is not left. Whatever you're taking, you finish. Otherwise, you have a problem what to do with it Shabbos morning. And then Shabbos after davening, you go home again. The same thing, you make Kiddush. You have your challah, and then you clean up, and then you go have your Pesach to come in. Now, Shabbos afternoon, and again, it's very important to know you can't know it's very late and everything, but you're not allowed to do any preparations whatsoever. You can't set the table, you can't take food out, nothing. And Shabbos. Now, Shabbos afternoon at Mincha, as everybody knows, our custom is that Shabbos Haggadah, we say after Mincha, we say Avada Mayinu, a good part of the chunk of the Haggadah. Then we also have the Seder Korban Pesach that we say out of Pesach. So after we daven Mincha earlier, a little bit, we say the Haggadah Shel Pesach, we say Korban Pesach, it's in the Seder, the men usually say it, Seder Korban Shel Pesach. Then you have to remember you're going from Shabbos into Saturday night, into Yom Tov. So before you do anything that's forbidden on Shabbos, but allowed on Yom Tov, you must say Baruch Hamavdol Ben Kodesh Lo Kodesh, because you have to make Abdullah. The man in Shmoneh Esrei say Vatei Dienu. Our custom is we say complete halal both nights of Pesach, but you have to have, Daven Maariv, you have to say Vatei Dienu. So once this man comes, and again in LA, it's going to be 8:03 in LA time. Saturday night, 8:03. You could say Baruch HaMavdil Ben Kodesh to Kodesh. Then you can do anything that you need to do in getting ready for the Seder. Now, when it comes to Saturday night, okay, our custom is to set up the Kaida after, after Ma'ariv, not before. We can't do it anyway before. So we set up the Kaida after Ma'ariv. We come home and you make Kiddush. Now, I want to say a few things. Number one, every mitzvah of the night of Pesach, men and women are equal. Okay? Men have to say it's 4 cups of wine. Women need the 4 cups of wine. Men have to say the Haggadah. Women have to say the major parts of the Haggadah. There's a number of major parts of the Haggadah we'll get to soon that you have to say in order to be Yetzer the mitzvah of Vigadat Levincha, which is part of the mitzvah of the night of Pesach. Okay, so now, normally when you make Kiddush, okay, the women have to light Yom Tov candles. Okay, after saying Baruch HaMavdil Ben Kodesh to Kodesh, she sets up the candles. She says Lahad Knef Yom Tov and the Shechianu, because it's Yom Tov, so you have to say Shechianu. Okay, now you have also so normally the way it works on a Friday night, the husband makes Kiddush, the wife listens, or whatever it is, and then she just takes a little bit of the wine. Now you can't do that on Pesach, that both nights is done. By the way, I forgot to mention one more thing, which is very important, that I'm sure everybody knows by now. You're not allowed to eat any roasted meat or broiled meat without any liquid in it both nights of Pesach. Not meat and not chicken. Fish you could. Not meat and not chicken. It shouldn't be any similarity to the Korban Pesach, to the Paschal lamb. So therefore, the din is that if there's a little bit of water put into it, then it's okay. As long as if it's in its no liquid, it's just in its own juice, you don't eat it. The custom is not to eat it both nights of Pesach, because we don't want any similarity to the Korban Pesach. Now, when you have the make Kiddush, so what do you do the night of Pesach? So it could be done in a number of ways. Everybody fills up their cup. The women, everybody fills up their cup. The head of the household makes Kiddush and Havdalah. It's Yakin Haz. There's a Saturday night. There's no psalmim, but you have to look at the candles. We don't do any fingers with the candles. What could happen, what you could do is the husband, I'm using the word husband, okay? The head of the household makes Kiddush. Everybody listens to Kiddush. They answer Amen, and then they sit down and drink their own cup of wine. Okay? If they want, they can make their own Kiddush. But if a woman is making her own Kiddush and she already said Shechianu, a candle lighting, then you do not make it again a Kiddush because you already said it. Or she can either say it herself and then finish and drink the wine, or she can listen to the husband and then just drink the wine. Okay? Now that's a virus Kaddish. Okay, now when you drink the wine, you can't sip the wine, you can't talk in the middle of drinking the wine. You have to drink, the cup has to hold at least 3 ounces, preferably a little bit more than 3 ounces, but 3 ounces. You have to drink more than half of the cup. Halachically, it's preferred to drink the whole cup, but the mitzvah is to drink more than half the cup. If you drink more than half the cup, you fulfilled your obligation. Men recline when they drink the wine. Women don't recline. And that's it, as far as Kaddish goes. Men recline on the left side, and women don't recline. After Kaddish comes Urchatz. You have to wash your hands without a bracha. But many people have a misconception that because you're not making a bracha, you can talk. and I believe that that's 100% wrong. The reason why we don't make a bracha because there's an argument if you do it or not. But if you hold you're doing it, then you're supposed to do it without talking. So you have urchatz. Urchatz, you wash your hands without a bracha, no bracha. Then you come back to the Seder table and you take the karpas, whatever you use. The Rebbe used to use onion. The Rebbe writes you can use onion or potato. Halachically, any vegetable which is adama is kosher for karpas. But the Rebbe writes onion. Now, the Rebbe writes onion or potato. The Rebbe personally used onion at the Seder. You take the karpas, okay, a small piece of karpas. You dip it into the salt water, custom is 3 times. And then you make a bracha b'rei adama. We have in mind, when you make the bracha b'rei adama on the karpas, we have in mind that it's also going on the mortar. Because even though you're eating the mortar after you washed for hametzi, but nevertheless, it's not part of the meal. It's something separate. So you would have to make a bracha b'rei adama on the mortar anyway. So therefore, we take a piece of karpas, we dip it into salt water first, then we make the bracha. We have in mind that it's going for the mortar of the mortar and the sandwich mortar, the keirach, and we eat it not reclining. Now, you have to eat, our custom is to eat a small piece of karpas, not a kazayas. People are hungry by then, but you're not supposed to eat a whole piece of kazayas of karpas. Why? Because if you do, then you have to make it after bracha. If you make it after bracha, then the mortar is not covered anymore because it's already after the after bracha. So to do it, and it's enough to ask questions to the kids to ask a question. So what we do is we eat a small piece. Again, we dip in the salt water, make our dama, have in mind, we do not recline when we eat the karpas. Yachas, we break the middle matzah, okay, and take the larger piece, break it into 5 pieces, put it away for the afikomen. Now, you shouldn't break the matzah 3/4 and 1/4 because you still need a kazayis left over. And you shouldn't measure, there's a story where a person was once measuring which piece is bigger. And I think it was the Rebbe Rashab said, a godel that you have to measure is not a godel. In other words, you have to make it a little bit bigger, break it into 5 pieces. The story is told with Rebbe Rashab once broke into 6, and he put away the 6th piece. He put away only 5 pieces for that afikomen. Then you have Magid, which is the Haggadah. The Haggadah must be recited. Okay? Now the Haggadah has to be recited in any language you want, but it has to be recited. Okay? It has to be recited by men and by women and by anybody else there at the Seder. The kid should be educated also to read but the main parts of the Haggadah that, by the way, the Alter Rebbe says is an obligation to read is Avodah Mayinu, Arami Eved Avi, the story Baruch Shem after Chosav Yisrael, and then Pesach Matzah Moder through the 2nd cup of wine. That's the minimal obligation that everybody must say the Haggadah. You could say it in any language. You don't have to say it in Hebrew, but you can say it in any language, but it needs to be said properly because that is a biblical mitzvah that night to recite the Haggadah. Now, by the Makkos, Chabad custom is not to take with the finger. The reason why people take the 10 drops of blood with the finger is because it says Etzba Elokim, it was the finger of God. But Chabad pours off the wine. It ends up to be 16 times. Dam va'esh v'sim v'soshin, and then the 10 Makkos and the Tzachadash Vacha. Then, by the way, you have to refill the cup because you need to have a full cup. You don't have a full cup anymore. Now, Rachza is now you wash your hands for the matzah. And then you come to Meitzi Matzah. Now you come to Meitzi Matzah. What is Meitzi Matzah? Now it's the biblical mitzvah of the night to eat matzah. So you're left with 2.5 matzahs, because a half a matzah you already put away for African. That was the middle matzah. So now you're left with 2.5 matzahs. Shabbos and Yom Tov, you need to have lechem mishnah. You need to have 2 halachos, 2 matzahs. So you pick up the 2.5 matzahs. You make the bracha, Baruch Hashem, Ameiti lechem min haaretz. You drop the bottom matzah. Now you're left with 1.5 matzahs. You're left with 1.5 matzahs. So now you make the bracha. Now you need to eat a kazayas. You need to eat an ounce. But now the problem is in halacha, which matzah do you take the ounce from? Do you take it from the top matzah or do you take it from the middle matzah? So therefore, what does halacha say? You do both. You take a kazayas from the top matzah, a kazayas from the middle matzah, and you eat it reclined. That's the men who have a Seder plate. Women who don't have a Seder plate, or any man that doesn't have a Seder plate, there's absolutely no reason why they need to eat 2 kazesim and matzah. The only reason we eat 2 because we don't know if it's in the top matzah, the middle matzah, but you're anyway getting from the box. You're not taking from the Seder plate. You don't have one. So therefore, the obligation is that you take it from the top and the middle, but that's only for the person. Now, what happens if somebody can't eat matzah that much? They should take it from the top matzah. You should have top and middle. What happens if you can't eat that much matzah? So halacha says you take it from the top matzah. And you eat it reclined. Now, it's very important. You're doing a biblical mitzvah. Okay, you need to eat a kazayas. How much is a kazayas? 1 ounce. Some people are more lenient, that's 3/4 of an ounce. But for the first biblical mitzvah, people should really try to do it right. And again, how much of a matzah is that? It varies. I'll give you an example. If you have 8 matzahs in a pound, which is 16 ounces, so 1 ounce would be a half a matzah. If you have 6 matzahs in a pound because they're thicker, so then you need less than a half a matzah. If you have 12 matzahs in a pound, then you're going to have to eat more than a half a matzah, right? So it depends. What people do, by the way, before Yom Tov, which is a very, very practical idea, not for the men, obviously, because they have their own 3 matzahs. But let's say they're having 10 people before Pesach, they'll get a little scale and they'll weigh matzah, 1 ounce or 3/4 of an ounce, and then they'll put it away in a bag. And so you have the kazesim, the amount that everybody needs. So then when you're doing middle of the Seder, instead of going crazy and you don't even know what the size is, you're already pre-packaged in a Ziploc bag or whatever, in a plastic bag. You have the amount of matzah that everybody needs. You weigh it before Yom Tov, which you're allowed to weigh. Then you can weigh it on Yom Tov also if it's not a digital scale. And then you have that everybody eats the proper matzah. That's Meitzi Matzah. Men have to recline when they eat the matzah. Okay, now, we don't dip the matzah into salt because we don't want to take away the taste of the mitzvah of the matzah. But there is salt on the table. Now, while you're eating the matzah, you're not supposed to be talking. You're not allowed to talk. You're in the middle of doing a mitzvah. Not only that, the matzah has to be eaten within a certain amount of time, preferably 4 to 9 minutes. You should try to eat this 1 ounce of matzah at least within 9 minutes. Now, when does the clock start ticking? When do you start? When do the 4 to 9 minutes begin? It begins when you swallow the first bite of matzah. So what a lot of people do, it's not necessarily like we mention every year. It's not Emily Post etiquette, but they'll put as much matzah as they can in the mouth before they swallow. And then once they swallow, that's when the clock begins. So they're a few minutes ahead of it. But again, you eat the matzah, you shouldn't be talking, and so on and so forth. After the meitzi matzah comes maror, which is, because it's rabbinic, you can have 3/4 of an ounce, which is like in a romaine lettuce, I think, what are they rate? 11 by 10, I think, the size of, and we use horseradish also, so it all combines to the proper amount. Afterward, and you don't recline by the mortar. By kreirach, which is the sandwich, so you take the bottom matzah, take a kazayis in the bottom matzah, you take another kazayis and mortar. Our custom is to take dry charesis for the sandwich, put it onto the mortar and shake it off because we don't want the matzah to get wet. And we, and then you put the matzah with the dry lettuce and you eat it. Then comes Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch is the Chabad customers begin the meal eating the egg. It's dipped into salt water. We're very careful not to get the matzah wet. The rest of the meal, you eat what you want, as long as it's not roasted meat. At the end of the meal, then you eat afikoman, 1 kazayis. It's preferable if somebody can to eat 2 kazayis, and women should eat 1 kazayis. The first night, it's preferable to finish afikoman before halachic midnight, which this year in LA would be 12:54. You have to check every city. It's approximately that time, 12:54. After Beirach, then we bench, we say Halonita, we finished, we opened the door for Eliyahu Navi, we finished the Seder, and so on and so forth. Okay? Now, as far as the second Seder, basically is the same as the first one, except there's no Havdalah at the beginning of the Seder. Again, you cannot do any preparation whatsoever for the second night on the first day. Again, if you have a large public Seder, a guy can set the tables, but that's it. And they put on the refrigerator. The first day of Pesach, we bench what's called Tal. We stop saying Mashiv Baruch Mered Hageshem. We start saying Mered Hatol. And then, then today jumped it. Then you have the last days of Pesach, there's no Shechionu by candlelight. Now, people have to understand that very briefly, the dinim of Chol HaMoed is not you can do whatever you want. It's more Moed than Chol. In other words, people should refrain. I know somebody was once taking pictures of the Rebbe on Chol HaMoed Bacher. I was taking pictures of the Rebbe on Chol HaMoed. The Rebbe turned to him in Yiddish and said to him, "Did you have a heter from a Rav? Did a Rav allow you to take pictures?" Another guy was taking pictures, Chol HaMoed. People ideally, halacha says, you take family pictures. So the only heter of taking family pictures, because that's when everybody's home, and otherwise you won't be able to do it. So it's called Davar Avud. It's called something that you're going to lose the opportunity, so you could do it. I'm just saying people shouldn't make. I got a number of calls about dentist appointments during Chol HaMoed. So besides the fact that it says in halacha you don't make doctor's appointments unless God forbid you need it, but you don't make doctor's appointments during Chol HaMoed. But also when you're going to a dentist, there might be a possibility there might be some chametz in the things they're using, which makes it a bigger question in halacha. Okay, that's it. I'm going to go to the questions, and if anybody has any more questions. Okay, what happens? What if you'll be at a hotel Thursday night? Okay, if you're going away for Pesach. By the way, I do want to mention a few things. Number one, if you want to get the halacha newsletter, you can go to jewishbeverlyhills.com. It was on the email today about today's class. You can get it there. Just click here. But you go to jewishbeverlyhills.com. I believe it's already on there on the show website. You can get it if you want. And again, this Amir Hashem is the last class until after Pesach, but the Wednesday after Pesach, not the Monday. Okay, what happens will be at a hotel Thursday night. So the dinner is like this. If somebody is leaving their house for Pesach, and they're leaving within 30 days of Pesach, they have an obligation to do a bedikas chametz. Now, they could do a bedikas chametz either in one room, the cleanest room before they leave, without a bracha, unless if they're leaving Thursday night, or if they're Thursday night in a room they're renting, and you rented it Thursday afternoon, so then if you want, you can make bedikas chametz in the hotel room or by your parents' room. In other words, what happens is kids are going to parents, and parents are going to kids. Okay? And they get there Wednesday or Thursday morning. If they give the landlord, whoever it is, you give him $1 and say, I'm renting the room that I'm staying in, so then halachically it becomes your room and you could you have an obligation to do bedikas chametz. But if you're just staying in somebody's house and you don't rent the room, you cannot make a bracha on bedikas chametz because it's not your house, it's not your obligation. But if you rent it, so then, that's what you do. So if somebody is going to be in an Airbnb, or they're going to be in a hotel Thursday night, but they got there Thursday afternoon, and they rent the room, then they do not have to do bedikas chametz in their house. They could just do a bedikas chametz. That's providing they're not coming home in the middle of Pesach. Now, a lot of times it's not going to go into this now because it's complicated, and you should call your local Orthodox competent rabbi. What happens? I'm leaving for Pesach, but a family is moving into my house for Pesach. I'm leaving, and they asked if they could stay in the house. And you say, sure, you're nice people. But the question is, whose obligation is it now? If that happens, you have to ask a shayla because it's too complicated to get into right now. Now, if we go to our children for Chag, do we nullify the chametz Friday? No. You nullify the chametz after bedikas chametz, Thursday night, and you nullify the chametz Shabbos after eating before 11:51 LA time. I don't know what time it is in New York. How many ounces do we need to drink? The cup has to hold 3 ounces. The cup has to hold 3 ounces. We need to drink more than half the cup. But because it's preferable to drink the whole cup, it's better to take a smaller cup and drink the whole cup than take a bigger cup and only drink more than half. But if somebody has a problem with wine, they can use grape juice. If they can mix wine and grape juice together, it's better. If not, they can use grape juice. If somebody is not, for health reasons, if they're not able to have not wine and not grape juice, again, you have to call your local Orthodox rabbi to tell you what needs to be done. They tell a famous story that somebody once came to a Rav and he asked him a shayla if he could do the mitzvah of the 4 cups of wine over milk. He was a poor man, didn't have money. So he asked him, can I do it over milk? So the rabbi took out a large sum of money from his tzedakah fund and he gave it to the guy and he told him, go buy wine and meat, whatever. So the rabbi's wife overheard the conversation. She said, why? Wine doesn't cost that much. Why did you give him so much money? He said, you don't understand. If he's asking me if he could use milk for cups, that means he doesn't have meat either. Because if he has meat, how can you use wine? How can you use milk for 4 cups? So therefore, I gave him money to buy fish and everything else. What are the requirements if you go to Airbnb during Chomed, no cooking involved? Will doubling the kitchen counters be sufficient? Obviously, you cannot use anything, the ovens. Okay. During Chol HaMoed, okay, or not this year, Friday you can kasher all day. At a Pesach, after the 5th hour, you cannot do any kashering with hot water. Okay? But if you're kashering with what's called libun, let's say you're self-cleaning an oven, so halachically, let's say you come to a place, Airbnb or whatever, during Pesach, halachically, you could kasher the oven if it's self-cleaning. Because you're not spitting it out, you're destroying it. That could be done even during Chol HaMoed. But if you want to just use the counters, you can't use hot water. The sinks are not kosher, you can't kasher them. You can use cold water from the sinks. You can cover the counters with whatever works, and then you can use the counters, preferably for things that are cold. The women pour the wine too. The custom is that they do. What does Chabad use for Havdalah for Psamim if we don't use clothes? This year it's not a problem because we don't make Havdalah Psamim this year. Because Saturday night is going into Yom Tov, so there's no very many Psamim. Shabbos Chol HaMoed is again going into Yom Tov of Sunday. So therefore this year there's no problem. Because we don't use clothes on Pesach, Dr. Rebbe writes, so therefore you have to get something else that smells good. Or else you just skip the bracha. This year it's irrelevant, like I said, because there is no Havdalah on a Saturday night. Do we need 10 pieces of bread in the hotel room? If you're doing it the night of B'dikas Chametz, I would suggest yes, because you're burning it the next day. If you're doing B'dikas Chametz in your home a few days before Pesach, do not put out the 10 pieces of bread. I mention this often. Somebody was going out of town and they wanted to burn Chametz Erev Pesach. On a regular year it was. And they put out the 10 pieces of bread and they put the 10 pieces of bread into the suitcase to bring to the destination to burn Chametz Erev Pesach. And they, of course, forgot all about it. And during Pesach, they opened up the suitcase and they found 10 pieces of bread. So, if you're doing it, if you're going to burn the chametz right away, you could put out 10 pieces of bread. If you're going to be in a hotel room and you're going to burn the chametz the next day, then yeah, you could put out 10 pieces of bread. If we do b'dikas chametz in the kitchen without a bracha of bread before Thursday, we could begin cooking. Do we on Thursday do b'dikas chametz with the bracha and bread in the rest of the house? Yes. Because you have to do b'dikas chametz and everywhere else. You're just doing the kitchen, and the kitchen you're not doing with the bracha. Somebody writes, I cannot eat matzah because it's too hard. This is for medical reasons. Can I eat matzah because of it? It's softer. Okay, you have to call a Rav privately. The bottom line is, first of all, somebody told me today, I'm not saying anything about it. Somebody told me that they have now somebody making in LA big shmura matzah that's very big and soft. I don't know where it's universal. I don't know where it is, but somebody said here in LA it's a Sephardic person with a Sephardic hechsher. I don't know hechsher. I'm not saying good or bad. I'm just saying the fact is, and he told me it's like a normal matzah. You maybe have 2 kazesim or 3 kazesim. This big matzah you can have 5 or 6 ounces of it's like 3 matzahs for $40, something like that. I don't know. But if you can't eat, you cannot fulfill your obligation with egg matzah. Egg matzah is not at all kosher for that. Do we say to Tachnun during bedtime Shema during this? No, because we don't say Tachnun for the whole month. Pouring the wine. Okay, we have 5 minutes left, and that's, I think, believe nobody else is asking questions. I just want to mention a few things. There's a biblical mitzvah on Pesach, it's called Vigada to Levincha, that you have a mitzvah to tell the story of Pesach to your kids. The biblical mitzvah that a father has, by the way, to tell the story of Pesach. You have to make it enjoyable for them. They shouldn't hate it. They should love Pesach. They should have fond memories of Pesach. As we mentioned by the other classes, if there's something that you personally don't want to eat, don't eat it. But what we didn't mention, then I should have mentioned it then 2 weeks ago, many times you have couples that are very strict in their own right, and they were invited to family, and they don't want to have a family fight or family feud or family issues, and that person is not as stringent as you are. So should you go or not? We should, no, I'm too firm for you. So every case is an individual case. I know I had a case recently, a student of mine, got married, and they're mamish Chassidish people, but the parents were not, I mean, they're, so to speak, traditionally from, but they're not at all on their level. And the mother said, we want you to come for Pesach. And the girl said, no, because we're much stricter than you. And the mother was very, very upset. So she told me what to do. And I told her, talk to your mother. See how accommodating she will be. And you know what? She spoke to the mother, and the mother was super accommodating for them. I guided them what they should do, shouldn't do. But, you know, you can never tell. But sometimes, like we said at the first opening class, that anger is, according to all opinions, biblically forbidden. And we find even Yaakov Avinu, who kept the whole Torah, yet, because he promised Rachel he's going to marry her, he transgressed Torah just to keep his word, that he was going to marry Rachel. So when it comes to Pesach, you can be as religious as you want, and as fanatic as you want, and there's nothing as being too fanatic on Pesach. Nevertheless, bottom line is, you need a mashpia or a rav that has an understanding of what it all means and discuss it with them, not Pesach, you know, earlier on, it's already too late, to talk to them and find out what needs to be done. How do you deal with it? Should I go? Shouldn't I go? You know, and what things could be done and should be done. That's the proper way of doing it. The Vidika Chametz in the kitchen of days before Pesach when is considered before the kitchen is ready. When the kitchen is already cleaned and you want to kasher the kitchen the next day, well, let's say, so the night before you want to kasher the kitchen, you'll make B'dikas Chametz in the kitchen, and then you can go cook, and then you can make the kitchen Pesach dik, and you can do whatever you want. That's the way of doing it. But you can't make B'dikas Chametz Thursday night if you're already cooking 4 days before that. You're cooking your Pesach dik food. It just doesn't make sense. B'dikas Chametz means you searching and make sure there is no Chametz. The in and not having processed kosher Pesach foods on Friday night, Shabbos morning, that's up to the individual. That's up to the individual if they want to do it or not. That's up to them. Halachically, there's nothing wrong with it because it's not chametz. It's still the time that you're allowed to eat chametz. Somebody once said by the Rebbe, whatever, that I don't know who it was. Somebody said to the Rebbe that like the machine matzah is chametz. You know, the machine Pesach. The Rebbe looked at him and they said, "What like chas v'shalom? People, thousands and thousands of people eat on Pesach. What are you calling chametz? You don't break a vessel to put the cup. If you have a broken vessel, you use it. You don't put a broken vessel. Anyway, okay, that's it for tonight. Everybody should have a kosher Felach and Pesach. And then the next class will be 3 weeks from tonight on April 23rd. Yeah, then everybody have a great Shabbos.
Good
Well,
job.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank you,
Rabbi.
Rabbi Shusterman. Thank you.
Shabbos, Chag Sameach.
Pesach in Israel with Mashiach.
Thank you. Chag
Good
Sameach.
job.
And thank you,
Chag Sameach.
Rabbi. Chag Sameach.